Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. Today we are on the last item of chapter 4, Innate Ideas. Just for if someone doesn't know what innate ideas are ideas that come with us, that we don't learn from anyone, that we have within ourselves, that come with us in our incarnation. The first person to bring the concept of innate ideas was Plato, the Greek philosopher. It was further developed by Descartes in the 17th century in France. So that's the concept of innate ideas. Of course, Spiritism has a different approach to it that involves reincarnation, of course. Philip, can you read it for us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Number 218. Does a spirit preserve any trace of the thoughts and ideas it had or the knowledge it acquired in past lives? It retains a vague memory, which gives the spirit what you call innate ideas. So the theory of innate ideas is not pure fantasy. No, the knowledge acquired in each life is not lost. When a spirit is free from the material body, it always remembers what it has learned. It may forget this knowledge partially or temporarily when it reincarnates. However, the dormant intuition that it maintains helps it advance. If this intuition did not exist, the spirit would always have to begin its education from scratch. In a new life, a spirit picks up from the point at which it had left at the end of its previous life. If that is the case, there must be a very close connection between two consecutive lives. That connection is not always as close as you might think, since the conditions of the two lives are often very different, and the spirit may have made considerable progress in the interval between them.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, the concept of innate ideas in Spiritism starts with the reincarnation. Of course, if we had many lives, we bring these innate ideas from our knowledge as an eternal spirit. Again, here we are talking about the intellectual aspect of our evolutionary path, right? So the spirit retains something according to their necessity on a new incarnation. It will be more if the spirit needs it to use and shouldn't spend much time developing it. It's going to be less if a spirit doesn't need to have this memory in the new existence, and actually if having this knowledge, more accurate knowledge, is going to prevent the spirit from pursuing other interests. So Kardec then asks if the innate ideas is not pure fantasy. Kardec is asking this based, of course, on the studies of René Descartes, talking about innate ideas, which is something that Descartes studied and developed on the concept that Plato brought in the ancient Greece. So the spirit may forget this knowledge partially or temporarily when it reincarnates, but maintain, as the spirits call here, the dormant intuition. Let's think about a genius mathematician in this incarnation, right? If this spirit that is not evolved enough to understand the need of going in different directions and learn more things, if for this spirit it's better not to bring the geniality of the mathematics knowledge, what will happen with the spirit? It will come into a new incarnation with the facility to learn math. Math is not going to be a challenge for the spirit. It will learn very easily, but it's not going to be dominant in their preferences and dominant in their choices. So probably they may, if it's needed, they may choose something related to math that uses math. They may choose something completely different. But if the spirit, if coming again with all the knowledge it has in math, will have the spirit focus only in math, of course, it's better for the spirit to bring to have it temporarily blocked. It's not really blocked because it's there in the intuition, but temporarily diminished in a sense, right? And again, we know that our brain, the physical brain, has specific areas for specific development. So with that notion, we can understand the changes that can be made to the human brain, the spirit, the new incarnation, the brain of the new incarnation, to allow some things to manifest more than others. And the last question that Kardec asks is, if that's the case, there must be a very close connection between two consecutive lives. And it's interesting because the spirits bring the notion that the conditions of two lives are often very different, and the spirit may have made considerable progress in the interval between them. So they are bringing to us the notion that we know from André Luiz, for instance, that the spirit can evolve in the spiritual world and can evolve a lot. But the thing is, it can learn and evolve, but it needs to come to a new reincarnation to put in practice what the spirit has learned in the spiritual world. So the connection in between two incarnations can be close in the sense that if you spend very little time in the spiritual world and you come back to a new incarnation very quickly, you're not going to be much different from the previous one, both morally and intellectually. But the conditions that you are going to face into the new incarnation will challenge you to move in different directions or to have different opportunities of learning and progress. As we mentioned last week, we are always placed where we have the best chance of succeeding in our new incarnation, surrounded by people that will help us progress both positively and in terms of challenging us to overcome our imperfections and to exercise our patience, resignation, acceptance, and all these things that we have to learn when we are living amongst difficult spirits around us, if we are not ourselves the difficult spirit. Okay?
A question.
Yes, Paco.
So I can tell that the spirit can progress both in physicality and in the spiritual world. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. In addition, but in the spiritual world, also you can also learn.
Yes.
As in contrast to physicality, that you don't really learn, but you implement the learnings you acquired.
No, you also learn in the physical life, right?
Okay, so there's also learning. So in both worlds, there's learning and progress.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In the spiritual world, you are surrounded by spirits that are more or less at the same level of evolution that you are. And you don't have the challenges of the physical life. So you can learn You can evolve, but to put in practice, you need to come to an incarnation, because then you will be surrounded by spirits that can be very different from you and in very different levels of evolution that you are not going to find in the spiritual world.
Okay, thanks.
Danny?
Can you remind us how long we usually stay in the spiritual world between two incarnations?
There is no defined time. The more you evolve, the more time you spend in the spiritual world. Because the more you evolve, the more you can take advantage of the opportunity of being in the spiritual world. When you are a primitive spirit, there is very little you can learn in the spiritual world. So you come to a new reincarnation in a much more, the incarnations are shorter and the time in the spiritual world is shorter also, right? Now, as you reach a certain level of evolution, and again, we're talking general because there are exceptions all the time, especially in this time between incarnations. You, like André Luis, for instance, right? He spent time in the lower zones, then he went to Nosular, he spent time there, and then he spent all these years learning about all these other things in the spiritual world. So you can see by reading his books how he evolved in the spiritual world. But the evolution is theoretical. Is he changed? Yes, he is. Is he a different spirit in the new incarnation? Very much so. But he needs to put to test if what he has learned in the spiritual world is really ingrained in him, right? If it becomes a part of you, that's how you learn if your qualities are just an effort or become a part of you, right? When you come to a new incarnation. Now, can a spirit incarnate, an evolved spirit incarnate very quickly, one after the other? Yes, if it's, important, necessary. We know that Divaldo, for instance, reincarnated in 1926, and he discarnated probably 50 years before that. I don't know exactly when Daniel Douglas Home discarnated, the famous English medium from the 19th century, which was Divaldo's previous incarnation. And Divaldo, as a more evolved spirit, could have stayed in the spiritual world for a good 200 years, right? You are reading Emmanuel and studying Emmanuel, right? Well, now you're Paul and Stephen, but you see that the incarnations between the time between incarnations of Emmanuel, the second book is 50 years later, right? So it tells you that he stayed 50 years in the spiritual world and then he came to a new incarnation. And then Hail Christ, I don't remember if they have the exact time there, but it's longer. And then we don't know of anything until he incarnates as the priest that was the founder of São Paulo, right, Manuel da Nóbrega. And then he comes back as Father Damiano, which is in the 1800s. Renunciation, you remember when he was, Danny?
1600s.
1600, right? So, which was the next incarnation. And we haven't heard of anything after that. And he's the spiritual guide of Chico, and we haven't heard that he had anything. So you see how can vary the time you spend in the spiritual world. It's really according to your needs. What's the best path for you right now? To stay in the spiritual world because there's something for you to do there, or to come? And also we are going to choose to come in order to help loved ones, in order to face a new challenge, in order to move in a different direction. So, and on the other hand, you have those spirits that stay obsessing others for sometimes hundreds of years, refusing to incarnate. You have the Pope that was the leader of the lower zones in liberation, right? He stayed there for 500 years since he discarnated, right? 500 years focused on causing harm to others, right? So, you know, it really has no specific time. But if you want to think of an average for us at our level of evolution, again, talking about the majority, I'm not going to say the vast majority, because it's not. Let's say the majority of us at our level of evolution, something between 550 and 100 years, I would say, between incarnations. Divaldo normally jokes, right, that you are going to reincarnate as your great grandchild, right? So you prepare you take care of your family well because you're coming back as your great grandchild or something like that. So what's the difference between great grandparent and a great grandchild? Probably between 50 and 100 years, right? Or something, maybe. But again, there is no specific time, and it can be very quick, right? For instance, a child that needs to finish, has an unfinished life, comes, a mother gets pregnant, he has a miscarriage, then gets pregnant again, and the same spirit comes, right? It's going to be, what, 1 year, 2 years? So it can be very quick also, right? Okay, 219.
What is the origin of the extraordinary faculties of individuals who appear to intuitively possess certain fields of knowledge, such as languages, mathematics, and so on, without any formal education? The vague recollection of their past, the result of progress previously made by the soul, but of which it has no present consciousness. From where else could that intuition originate? A spirit may change its body or shell, but it remains the same.
With spiritism, it makes it so much easier for us to understand whenever we see these little geniuses, right? You know, let's talk of Mozart. We always use Mozart as an example here. He started composing symphonies when he was 4 or 5 years old, something like that, right? So he has to have musical education in a previous incarnation, and not basic musical education. He has to have deep musical education in a previous incarnation to bring all this knowledge with him that allows him, with 5 years old, to compose a symphony, right?
More than one incarnation.
Probably.
Create that knowledge into the spirit.
Yeah, probably, yes. Most likely more than one incarnation as a musician, as learning, studying music, and also time in the spiritual world studying music, right? So why did he come with that faculty? Because, of course, the result of what he left us is very relevant for humanity, right? Music is something very important, and the music that these composers like Mozart, Beethoven, Chopin, Bach left were really transformative at the time that humanity was changing from the domination of the church, the submission to the church, to a time of more free thinking, of more understanding of our spiritual nature in a more ample way that Spiritism came to expand. So it was important, these musicians, to come and bring these advances in music. When you think of a mathematician, and I saw a video of a child this week, a 5-year-old child. giving medical advice, telling, you ask the child, why do someone needs to do this or that, and the child, 5-year-old, answered, because the blood and the heart works that way. And so how can a 5-year-old know everything, right? Because he was a doctor in a previous incarnation, and it's very likely that it was a recent incarnation, right? Because to bring the knowledge of medicine that he brings, it's something that he has to have learned in the spiritual world and in the physical world when medicine was already kind of advanced. It cannot be something from the 16th century, right? Because again, for a child to bring, the closer one incarnation is to the other, the easier is for the spirit to bring the recollections and the intuition and what is called the innate ideas, right? We see in those cases of remembering past lives, right, the children have, and that Dr. Alexander Almeida covers in this book, Science of Life After Death, that he spoke to us here in May. He talks, these children remember their lives with details. So they bring more than the recollections. They bring the knowledge and that they had, and the understanding of where they were and what they were doing, what they did. So again, the spirits tell us very clearly where could this intuition originate, and for us spiritists, it's easy when we understand and accept the concept of multiple incarnations and the opportunity of learning and of bringing this knowledge with us as we come to a new incarnation. Okay? To 20, Philip?
Can we lose certain intellectual faculties when we change our bodies, such as an interest in the arts? Yes, if we have tarnished that faculty or made bad use of it. An intellectual faculty may also lie dormant for an entire existence because the spirit chooses to exercise another faculty that is completely unrelated to the latent ability. However, it will come into play in a future life.
So again, coming back to Mozart, right? We spoke many times. His next incarnation, it's very likely that the faculty will lie dormant, because otherwise he'll come here and he will be a genius in music again, and he will never develop in a different direction. If you watch the movie that's been for a very long time ago called Amadeus, that's his story, right? You see that he was far from a perfect spirit. Of course, there's a lot of fiction in a movie like that, but you see that he has to develop in other areas. If he comes as a genius again, he will only work with music. So he has to lie dormant. But also, the spirits bring a different concept here. If we make bad use of our faculties, what does that mean? If you abuse the faculty that you have, you are a genius of something, and you use that geniality to abuse others, to use others, you can come with that dormant, blocked, or whatever you want to call for the existence. So you are not going to be a genius in your next existence, because you need to learn humility, and you need to learn to live with limited knowledge, right? And that can explain other intellectual challenges that some people may have, right? So there are two paths here that can block our knowledge from an incarnation: the necessity of moving the other directions, or bad use we made of it. However, as they say here, will come into play in a future life. Again, everything that we learn belongs to us, belongs to the eternal spirit. We are never going to lose any intellectual or moral qualities that we have achieved. The moral qualities are always with us. The intellectual qualities may be dormant in one incarnation if it's for our need, our necessity. Okay? All right. Okay.
221. Shall we go ahead?
Yes, please.
Are the instinctive knowledge of God's existence and the intuition of a future life due to retrospective memory, which appears to be natural to human beings even in the primitive state? Yes, it is the memory that a person maintains of what they knew as a spirit before reincarnation, but pride often stifles this feeling. Are beliefs that are similar to Spiritism found across all nations due to this memory? The principles contained in Spiritism are as old as time itself and are consequently found everywhere. Incarnate spirits maintain the intuition of their time as a spirit and possess an instinctive consciousness of the spirit world. Still, this intuition is often tainted by prejudices, ignorance, and superstition.
Okay. So this is a very interesting question, right? When we discuss the instinctive knowledge of God and the intuition of the survival of the soul, future life. It's natural to human beings, even in the primitive states. Even when we are primitive spirits, we already have this idea of God. Of course, when you go to the ancient civilizations, they represent God in a way that makes sense to them. So some of them have multiple gods. It rains, so there is a god of rain. It snows, there is a god of snow. The sun, the god that protects the hunting. So we create, as we are still underdeveloped in terms of our knowledge and understanding of ourselves and the world, we need to create gods that are close to us. But we always create God. If you find all the ancient civilizations, when you research them, they have, in one way or another, the notion of a divinity, right? Which varies from civilization to civilization. Why? Because the intuition, like they say in the end, is tainted by prejudices, ignorance, and superstition. In the beginning, it's all superstition, right? It rains, and you pray to a god that it's too hot. You pray to a god, and it starts to rain, so you decide there is a god for rain, and so on and so forth. So, for those that call themselves atheists or do not believe in God, you have to make a rational decision not to believe in God, because our natural intuition is to believe in God. The sign of that is that it's found in every civilization and every human species throughout our evolutionary path. So it has to come from somewhere, right? Because it cannot come everywhere at the same time if it doesn't come from the spiritual world or our own innate idea of it. The concept of innate idea again. We have a concept of divinity. So the beliefs that Spiritism brings, reincarnation, survival of the soul, God as the creator, are as old as time itself. If we go to the oldest known studies that is from the Vedas in the Hindu civilization, they already talk about future life, about reincarnation, not with this name. Again, just a reminder to everyone, reincarnation is a word that was created by Kardec, okay? That's not very well known, but I did research and found that before Kardec, there was no word. The word used was resurrection. You had metempsychosis that we're going to study very soon, but the word reincarnation, come back to the flesh, was first coined by Kardec, like the word medium. But again, the concept exists forever. It doesn't belong the same way that mediumship doesn't belong to spiritism. Spiritism just explained it because the mediumship existed for all times and found in all civilizations. Reincarnation is also found everywhere, right? Even in the, as we are going to see in the next chapter, even in the Bible, when Jesus talks about reincarnation or to be born again, doesn't have the word in reincarnation, but to be born again. He talks about it to Nicodemus, and we're going to see it in a couple of weeks, I think. Okay. All right, this was the last one on this chapter. Now we are going to chapter 5, which is a chapter, the whole chapter is written by Kardec. It goes on for 8 pages and is a dissertation by Kardec. It's theoretically question number 222, but is actually dissertation by Kardec on considerations of multiple lives. I divided in 4 parts, so because it's very long, and we'll see if we probably will be able only to do the first part today because it's the longest one, but we'll see how far we go on this one. Okay, Philip, are you ready to read for a long time?
Forever. 222. Considerations on multiple lives. Some people object that the dogma of reincarnation is not new and merely a revival of Pythagoras' theory. We have never claimed that Spiritism was a modern invention. On the contrary, it is the result of natural law. Therefore, it must have existed since the beginning of time, and we have always striven to prove that traces of it are found in the earliest chronicles of antiquity. Pythagoras was not the author of metempsychosis, but borrowed it from the Indian and Egyptian philosophers who had already maintained this theory for ages. The idea of soul transmigration was a widespread belief admitted by the most eminent thinkers of that time. Where did this idea come from? Through revelation and intuition. We do not know, but it may be safely assumed that no concept could have survived ages and commanded the respect of the most esteemed members of the human race if it had not been based on some solid ground of truth and reason. The ancient roots of this doctrine should therefore be considered an argument in its favor, rather than objection. At the same time, it must not be forgotten that there is a fundamental difference between the antique doctrine of metempsychosis and the modern doctrine of reincarnation, namely, that the spirits who teach the latter categorically reject the idea that the human soul can be embodied in an animal and vice versa. The spirits who now teach the dogma of multiple corporal lives reaffirm the theory that was born in the earliest ages of history, and that has maintained a position of importance up to the present day for a vast majority of people. However, They present this dogma in a manner that is more rational, more compliant with the natural law of progress, and more in harmony with the wisdom of the Creator by stripping away the embellishments and exaggerations added by superstition. A circumstance worthy of note is the fact that it is not in this book alone that the doctrine in question has been instructed in recent years. Even before its release, numerous publications of similar nature had already been circulated in various countries, and their number has greatly increased since. Here we may ask, why is it that the statements of all spirits are not in agreement? We will revisit this matter later. For now, we will review this topic from a perspective that is entirely irrespective of any assumed declarations of the spirits. Let us suppose that they made no statement whatsoever in regard to it, and even that the very existence of spirits had not been surmised. Placing ourselves on neutral ground for a moment and admitting the possibility of the hypothesis pertaining to the variety and unity of corporal lives, let us see which of these is most in line with reason and our own interests. There are people who reject the idea of reincarnation simply because they do not like it, declaring that their present life has been quite enough for them, and they have no desire to start a similar one. We would like to ask these people whether they think that God has asked them their wishes and opinions in regulating the universe. Either the law of reincarnation exists or it does not. If it exists, no matter how displeasing it may be to them, they are compelled to submit to it because God does not ask their permission to enforce it. It is as if a sick person were to say, I have suffered enough today. I do not choose to suffer tomorrow. Regardless of his or her opposition, that person must continue suffering, not only tomorrow, but day after day until cured completely. Likewise, if it is their destiny to live again physically, they will reincarnate and live again. Will it serve them to rebel against necessity in vain, like a child refusing to go to school, or a condemned criminal refusing to go to prison? They must submit to their fate, no matter how unwilling they may be to do so. Such objections are too foolish to merit more serious examination. However, in order to reassure them, we will say that the spiritist doctrine of reincarnation is by no means as terrible as they imagine it to be, and that if they studied it in depth, they would realize that they have nothing to fear. They would understand that each new life depends solely on their own behavior, that they will be happy or unhappy depending on their actions in this present life, and that they may even raise themselves above the danger of falling into the quicksand again due to their actions in this life. We are assuming that those whom we are addressing believe in some sort of afterlife, and that they do not anticipate annihilation or losing their soul to a universal whole, like so many drops of rain in the ocean. If you believe in a future life, you probably do not think that it will be the same for all, because in that case, what would be the point of doing good? Why would human beings exercise any form of self-control? Why should they not satisfy all their passions and desires, even at the expense of the rest of the world, if the result is the same no matter what. If, on the other hand, you believe that the future will be happier or less happy according to what one does in life, wouldn't you want to be as happy as possible in the future, since it will be for eternity? Do you consider yourself to be one of the most excellent beings who has ever walked the earth, and that thereby you are entitled to supreme happiness? No. You admit then that there are some who are better than you and who consequently are entitled to a higher standing, although you do not deserve to be counted among sinners? Place yourself then for a moment in this situation and imagine that someone comes to you and says, "You are suffering. You are not as happy as you could be, and you are seeing others enjoying pure happiness. Would you like to exchange your position for theirs?" "Of course," you reply. "How do I do that?" Very simple. All you need to do is redo what you have done badly and try to do it better. Would you hesitate to accept the offer, even at the cost of several lifetimes of trials? Let us look at an even more straightforward example. Imagine that someone approaches a person who, although not completely destitute, is forced to suffer a life of poverty due to a small income, and says to him or her, "Here is an immense fortune that can be yours on the condition that you work hard for 1 minute." The laziest person would say, without hesitation, "I'm ready to work for 1 minute, 2 minutes, an hour, a whole day if necessary." What is a day's labor in comparison to the certainty of wealth and comfort for the rest of my life? What is the duration of a corporal life in comparison to eternity? Less than a minute, less than a second.
Thanks, Philip. I stopped in your favorite phrase, Paco.
Yes. Less than a second. Yes.
So we have to always remember Kardec was a scholar, right? When he was going to write very thoroughly and very organized and making sense of everything. So he starts by saying the dogma of reincarnation is not new. And some people say it's just a revival of Pythagoras' theory. And Kardec says, we never claimed that Spiritism was a modern invention. What he did with Spiritism is organize the thoughts and the ideas, but he didn't bring anything new. Because reincarnation is a result of the natural law. If you accept and understand the natural law as God's law that is perfect, and you accept and understand that reincarnation is part of the natural law, it has always existed, and human beings have always had an intuition of it. And then Kardec says it must have existed since the beginning of times. And also that Pythagoras was not the author of metempsychosis. Metempsychosis is if you behave badly, you are going to reincarnate as an animal, as a cockroach, as an ant, or if you're not that bad, you can reincarnate as a cat or a dog. That's the concept of metempsychosis, which does not match with what Spiritism teaches us. What we learn from Spiritism is the divine law. One of the divine laws is the law of progress. And reincarnating as an animal will be going against the natural law, which is progressing, because you cannot progress incarnating as an animal. You regress. when you reincarnate as a human being, even with limited abilities to express yourself as a human being, you are not regressing. You are learning different things, challenges that are needed for you to evolve. So that's the concept of incarnating spiritism, moving always forward. So Kardec says the idea was a widespread belief. Where did it come from? Revelation or intuition? We don't know, but it's always there. When we talk about the exiles from Capella that inhabited the old civilizations of Egypt and others, they bring with them the concept of reincarnation. And you can see them, especially between amongst the Egyptians, right? Why did they want to preserve the body of the pharaohs and bring all the things with the pharaoh, leave all the things that the pharaoh liked in their tombs? Because they thought it was necessary to have that when the pharaoh came in a new reincarnated to have there everything, the physical body and all the things together. They believed in reincarnation, but they didn't understand the concept of a new physical body. They thought it was that we were coming back to our old body. Now, the notion of metempsychosis that we see also in the old beliefs, it may have come from our own instinctive nature, coming from a more advanced civilization, and incarnating in a more gross physical body, we can have the intuition that we are reincarnating as animals, meaning we're reincarnating worse than we were before. So again, this is a supposition of where does the metempsychosis concept comes from. You know, the concept of a spirit's more evolved physically from a more advanced civilization, being forced to reincarnate on Earth in a more gross, dense body, and brings this intuition that this is a body that is not the body I used to have, so I'm becoming an animal or something like that. So then Kardec starts analyzing the concept of reincarnation. He says here, independently of what the spirits tells us, let us suppose that they said nothing. Let's put ourselves on neutral ground. And again, this is a very important lesson that Kardec teaches us, right? Because every time we are analyzing an idea or something, our tendency is to approach from one side, always. We bring our own prejudices, our own biases, and we approach from one side on the other. And it becomes very difficult for us to put ourselves in neutral position if we are already bringing our own preconceptions. So Kardec is saying, let's put ourselves in neutral ground and analyze the possibility of one physical life or multiple lives. So people that reject the idea of reincarnation, some of them, they don't like that. Then Kardec said, well, either the law exists or it doesn't. If it exists, everybody has to go through the law of reincarnation. You need to reincarnate, like it or not, understanding or not. And then he talks about, you know, comparing to a sick person that decides that they don't want to be suffering the day after. And the process is natural. A reincarnation may be a painful process, but we have to go through as we evolve, no matter if we are willing to do or not. So reincarnation is a natural law that we have to go through. Spiritism helps us understand it, gives us consolation and hope, educate us how to deal with it. And then he talks a little bit about those that think that we go back to a hole in the spiritual world, right? There is this people that believe, which is the pantheists, that believe we are just a part of the universe, or some of them think that we're just a part of God, that left God to experience our own physical life, and then when we discarnate, we go back to the whole, or to God, or to whoever. But again, Kardec analyzing it from a neutral point of view. Why we would then try to live a decent life if it's not going to make a difference for our future? The vast majority of us, if we knew there were no consequences for our actions, would behave much poorly than we actually behave. Because what controls us is our fear of being exposed, in some cases, respect for others, and concerns about our future life. Now, we remove the concerns about future life, concerns about society, and you start thinking that the only thing that matters is what we do in this life, because in the end, we go back to the whole, right? We have actually people that believe that life ends here and behave well, morally and intellectually. These are really people to be admired, because they already made the more difficult step, right? Which is being a moral, decent person without believing in anything after, right? So for them, it will be easier. When they arrive on the other side, it's just a matter of changing the direction. But for those that don't act wrongly because of fear of the future, it may be more challenging to face the future life. But it is better, again, than to allow our inferior tendencies to take over and to act like there is no tomorrow, like they say, right? But if we understand that the future will be happier, if depends on what we do here, understand and accept this concept, internalize this concept, it becomes much easier for us to make an effort to work on our improvement. And then Kardec talks to us comparing to others here, right? Are we the best individuals on this planet? No. Are we the worst individuals on this planet? No, also. So there are those better than us and worse than us. How can we get better than we are today? And the Spirit tells us, you just need to make an effort. You just need to redo what you have done badly and try to do better. You need to choose a better path for yourself. And then he gives a couple of very interesting examples, and he finishes with the one that Paco loves, right?
Yes.
What is one life compared to eternity, right? It's just less than a second, less than a minute, considering that we talk about, let's say 80 years of a physical life compared to millennia. It's nothing. It's
Nothing.
really a drop in the ocean. But we, knowing that, it's different from internalizing that. We need to make that concept be part of our thoughts at all moments, right? We still have to force us to think, oh, what is happening today, it's not that important compared to eternity. But we still give too much importance to problems of the physical life. So we need to try to internalize this concept that one physical life is very little compared to eternity, less than a minute, less than a second, as the Spirit says here. Okay? We are going to stop here. Any final questions, comments?
Yes, John, Carol here. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, general question. Let's say there are some good agnostics or good people who are atheists, and they go to the spirit world. Do they sort of cluster together, or would they be perhaps offered counseling or classes in having a better understanding about reincarnation? In other words, they're good people. They're not being punished. But what would they be doing in the spirit world?
Yeah, the first issue is for them to accept that they are dead and life continues, right? That may take a while, because if you refuse to believe that there is an afterlife, and again, you can, we mentioned atheists, agnostics. There may be some atheists or agnostics, I don't know, that believe in the survival of the soul but does not believe in a God, which may be possible. So that will be, a different story. But someone that does not believe that the physical body, the spirit, that we survive the death of the physical body, it may take a while for us to accept and recognize that we are dead, to understand, right? But once we do that, if we are, as you said, a spirit that someone that led a good life, was an upright person, decent person, it's so easy for them to take some quick classes of understanding of our spiritual nature, right? It's I think sometimes, and again, this is my thought here, I think it's easier for them than for someone that is a fanatic religious, that believe in their religion and their dogmas and are impervious to listen to anything outside their dogmas and beliefs. I think it's much harder for this type of people than for someone that is a good person that is an atheist, because it's not much to change their thoughts. Once they accept and understand that we are eternal spirits, right, or that our life continues after the death of the physical body, they'll be curious to understand better what happens. And of course, they will always be guided and protected and directed to classes or to whoever it's important for them to learn.
I have a question.
Goodbye.
I wonder if we're looking at this, there's another life in the spiritual world, which I do believe, of course. But I wonder if it's just a matter of perspective, because if I were to look, if I were in the spiritual, let's imagine I'm in the spiritual world, I'm looking at physicality, but physicality is practically an instant from that perspective. And if I am an advanced perspective, and you're talking about another life, no, there's only one life.
Yes.
Okay, and then if you say, well, come on, but physicality is an instant. And instant should define as that period of time that is finished once it starts. So the point is that it may be different to look at it from my perspective here, and if I were an advanced entity on the other perspective. There's no other life. That's the life. That's reality.
Yes. The reality is
It's not that one.
Sure. When you go back to the spiritual world, a
That's the
whole new world opens before you, right? Because you don't have the restrictions of the physical body.
My point is there life after the spiritual life? No.
No, there is only one life.
Exactly. But someone who's advanced.
There are several incarnations, but only one life.
Only one life.
Yes.
So
but again,
it's a matter of perception. I understand. Let me tell you, I believe in the afterlife, but I see like a touch there of just perception, relativity of perception.
Yes, but for you to have that perception, you need to be open to it, right?
Definitely, and entities out there are more advanced. you ask. I'm presuming this, of course. I don't know this, but you could ask an advanced entity: Is is there life after this? No, this is life.
Yeah,
That's, when we go there, it's just an instant. It's that, we just it's an instant period.
yes, absolutely.
I don't know. I'm thinking out loud, Joe.
I think that's more evolved spirits think that way, but spirits at our level of
No,
evolution,
that will allow it. No, definitely.
yeah,
That's what I call it from my perspective, speculation and not reality.
all right. So we stop here. This Saturday, we have a lecture by Paul Turi from Florida. The subject is Empty Lives. I'm not sure if it's based on the book Empty Lives by Joanna De Angelis, but possible. This Sunday, it's the third Sunday of the month, we'll be studying the Medium's book. Okay. Book club is studying Paul and Stephen. What is the chapter for next week, Danny?
We read about 2/3 of chapter 1, so we finish chapter 1 and start chapter 2. So the whole chapter 2. I have the page. Yeah, I have the page, but there are different editions.
Yeah.
So
Right. Chapter 1 of the second part.
yeah, so we are going to finish chapter 1, but it's required to read chapter 2 because we are going to move on to chapter 2 for sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Danny. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Elmo, and thank you, Philip, for reading this evening. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together as brothers and sisters for our studies of the Spirit's Book, Book 2, Chapter 4 and 5, Innate Ideas and Multiple Lives. Innate ideas come from the eternal Spirit through the connection and recollection from previous past lives. We have instinctive knowledge of God's existence, which varies from civilization to civilization and from every human species along the way. Reincarnation was the word and is the word coined by Allan Kardec. Reincarnation is natural law in harmony with the Creator. It has always existed, and humans have the intuition it is so. Humans progress as humans and do not revert or regress as animals. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, the counselors, the mediums, the workers, and all the participants this evening. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace, and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we go forth now as beacons of love, light, peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.